Have you always been super connected? Walk me through that.
So I was already successful in business. I had multiple million-dollar businesses. But once I incorporated what I was learning about emotions through my own healing and through interacting with the rest of the world differently, then I built my businesses to 30 and 40 times what they were.
They've built a business out of survival. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? They've achieved success, quote unquote. But now they're at a position, they're at a point where they're looking to sell their business or they're looking to start really, truly scaling. And what is the key dynamic in scaling? Is trust. I am so excited today. I get the opportunity to be with a dear brother. As I was saying, it feels like I've known you for forever. You have been everywhere around the world helping businesses scale, and now you're on the emotional route helping these high producers all over the world tap into what actually matters during the human experience. I'm here with Randy Lyman, and I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome to Miami. We're no longer in Arizona. Thank you for being here. How are you feeling today?
Wonderful. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Yes. I mean, I want to jump.
We've probably only known each other like 500,000 lifetimes. You were kind of exaggerating a little bit.
Right? No, I think that it's so interesting. I want to give even some context on how it is that we even met. Someone, right, which is your PR person, was like, I have a feeling that you are going to connect with this human being so much. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. But it was so interesting because as soon as I read your bio, I was like, is this the other version of me? Are we the same person? And I to be honest with you, I don't find too many people who have been in the path that we've been on leave that world and not necessarily leave it at all. And just to give some context, you were in the business world. You had multiple 8-figure companies. You sold these companies. And I also want to emphasize, it's not just any company. I actually did a little bit of digging. Was it you were in the automotive space?
Yes.
It's interesting.
A completely left brain, masculine automotive space.
And let's even take it back, because even when we were just connecting right now, I'm like, this is someone who's super, super connected. Have you always been super connected? Walk me through that.
Goodness sakes. So a little over 36 years ago, I was completely left brain, educated as a physicist. I'm an engineer. I'm a business person, and I'm going to be as smart as I can and work as hard as I can. And I'm going to find success and happiness. Well, the problem was I turned off my emotions in order to try and find success. So no matter how successful I was, the real joy, the real fulfillment was never there. And then I met Maria on November 14th in 1989. She walked into my service shop. I was filling in for one of my service managers who was on vacation. And the moment I met her, I knew I had to meet her and really get to know her and spend time with her. So I repaired her car, and a few weeks after that, her and I connected. And we spent 3 years together. She had been immersed in spiritual learnings and study for many, many years. And so I was completely left brain. She was very right brain. And because we spent the 3 years together as partners, she introduced me to the unseen component of the human experience.
Yeah.
And so she wasn't as much about emotions as I am now, but she was all about spirit and guides and the parts of the universe that are bigger than our human experience that absolutely influence everything in our human experience. And about a year into the relationship, I went to a 4-day business communication retreat. And during that retreat, I had a huge emotional release. I talk about that in my book, The Third Element. And I had a release around trying to be competent to earn my family's love and respect because of something somebody had said 12 years before. So I have this big release. I go back to work 4 days later, and all the people in my life who were incompetent that I couldn't fix by looking at myself in a mirror of their incompetence and my actions and my thoughts, now I have this emotional release and everything's fixed. I've been working on this problem for 2 months, and suddenly the challenge of incompetent people in my life, they either became competent or they left. And it wasn't just questionable. It happened immediately. So me as a scientist, I look at cause and effect. So the cause was my release. The effect was the issues of competence went away. So I said, wait a minute, the law of attraction does not just respond to my thoughts and my actions. The law of attraction responds to my emotions and especially my unseen emotional wounds from the past.
Yeah.
And once I made that connection, I just looked at everything in my life differently, and everything was about, okay, what's the emotional component? So I went from being completely left brain to focusing on emotions. And over time, I went through more of my own release and healing. And I became very comfortable with emotions and the connection between the challenges in our life and the emotional component. Does that kind of make sense? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm guessing you've had similar experiences.
I feel really where I'm kind of like even stuck on too is like that really, and I don't think a lot of people say this, is you give thanks to the person who walked you through this. I'm still stuck on that because a lot of times people forget, right? Like who were these portals and who were these angels in our lives? Like any other person might have been like, oh, yeah, this I found this journey on my own. But no, you literally remember when that portal was opened. And the, but the thing is that even if it was this person who kind of started to show you these practices, and you say her name is Maria, I'm guessing she's Hispanic, she's Latina. I mean, and you're from, can you talk to me where you're from too?
Where am I from?
Yeah, where were you born?
In Sacramento, but I spent most of my life, my young life, from 3 years old until 18, up near Seattle, Washington, in a very rural town there. Just
Okay.
a little white collar, blue collar redneck town
Yes.
in the remote.
And here comes Maria. Like, where was she from?
Well, she grew up in the Seattle area,
Okay.
and I was in Sacramento for many years, went to college there, and then I had a service shop up in Redmond, Washington. That's where I met her, and that's where I spent about 3 years with her there.
Yeah.
So it was a completely different way of looking at life.
Yeah.
But she talked about energy from the perspective of higher spiritual energy,
Yeah.
and me in physics, everything's energy
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
mathematics and what we can
Yes.
measure in the way of vibrations and such and energy.
Yes.
So we connected on the common ground of energy, and then I learned about energy from a different perspective from her. And again, once I started down that path and I started to have some positive results in my life,
Yeah.
I couldn't let it go. That was more important and much more interesting than looking at everything from a scientific point of view. Science can give us a lot, but it's limited.
Yeah.
And as Einstein said, imagination is so much bigger than the facts in the scientific world. And that's really where all the science comes from, is we're guided to a deeper understanding. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle in 1927, he was on a 6-week hiatus on an island somewhere because he had allergies. Well, while he was there, he channeled to him, he just out of nowhere figured out the uncertainty principle. And that's the last piece of science that we've really received on this planet since 1927.
Wow.
So for almost 100 years, nothing new. Now, there's been discoveries around the science that was known, but no real new science. So he brought that through out of nowhere. A lot of what I've learned has been channeled out of nowhere and come through my intuition. And to me, it's just so much more powerful to be able to look at the world from the point of view of what can be. What's bigger than what my human mind can guide me to? What's bigger than what science can guide me to? And so I was already successful in business. I had multiple $1-million businesses. But once I incorporated what I was learning about emotions through my own healing and through interacting with the rest of the world differently, then I built my businesses to 30 and 40 times what they were to consideration of the emotional component.
And would you say like so here you are, okay, you're in the middle of, at that time, right, where you have this shop and you start to kind of get a little bit deeper into spirituality and energy and, how it is that it affects your life. Do you start to go to work and talk to your coworkers like while you guys are working on cars and stuff? And are they like, this guy went crazy? Because I think that one of the things that I notice is, when we're talking about, especially like the blue collar kind of man who, and right now we're finding part of the new earth is that we're finding soul led leaders on all different types of environments. And so what happens is, especially a blue collar guy who's in the middle of Arizona or California, and when that awakening kind of happens and they're finding that energy is everywhere, and while their vibration is aligned with every single thing from the way that they work on a car to the way that they are with their parents and their intimate relationships. And so in your case, you decide, okay, I'm going to start to kind of get deeper into this world. Now you're working on a car and you're talking about this with your buddies. How was that transition per se? And where did you decide, okay, no, I need to start implementing this into more different areas of my life?
So first I looked at myself and I went through my own healing. And then I started to share with a few people I worked with.
Yeah.
And I had a warehouse, a couple service shops, and a remote warehouse. So I had a lot of different departments of smaller people. I didn't have to come out of the closet, so to speak, the spiritual closet.
That's kind of like what it is, right?
Yeah,
Like the spiritual
in front of,
closet.
and that point in time, I think my business was probably around 45 or 50 people. So I took a small group of 7 people and I said, I'm going to start experimenting here, because if I screw up, I don't want to lose respect of everybody who I work with. I don't want to fail. I need to try this out and do a test run in a small group. So I took a group of 7 people in my Sacramento repair shop. And the first game we did, I just remember this now.
Yeah.
I said, okay, we're going to visualize what we want to happen this week. So we had the whiteboard and everybody gets to choose 5 different types of differentials, a differential repair shop you really like to work on. And we're going to write them down. And if we get one of those and you chose it, that was one of the ones you wanted to draw into our reality, then you get $5. So each person chose 5 different differential types that they like to work on, and we wrote them down, and then when they come in, they get the $5. So it's just a fun game. It didn't cost them anything. They think I'm a little nuts, but let's play the game. So about 3 weeks in, these guys were like, oh, this is fun, because I'm seeing the kind of work I want now, and I'm getting rewarded for it, not only in the $5, but I enjoy my work more now. So we started with that, and then I said, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do some group planning on what you guys want to see change. You get to tell me what you don't like, what you do like, and we're going to make changes in the business based on your input. Well, the first couple meetings, they were really shy, because why am I going to tell this guy? He's not going to listen to me. Now, they knew me and they trusted me, but still, who comes to the average team member and says, hey, tell me what you want? So I started listening. And I had some epiphanies for me, and we had some breakthroughs. And then finally they said, yeah, this works. And so they started to share with me what really works for them. And we made changes. And then the interesting thing was, as I listened to them more, then they listened to me more.
Of course. It's like that.
Yeah, and should I have been able to logically get there? Maybe, but I didn't. I didn't realize it until I experienced it. So I listened to them, they listened to me, we're working together, and things really got a lot better. They were already pretty good. We were successful and we liked working together, but now we bonded, we trusted each other more. And then once I had success there and I made a few small mistakes, then I could take what I learned and expand it into more areas of the business. But if you take the average VP right now in a large company or large corporation, or you take an entrepreneur with a group of 10 people, they're not going to take this risk, because if they fail, it's catastrophic. They either don't get the promotion, they get moved to a position they don't want, or they lose the trust of the people they're leading. So I was able to experiment in a small part of my business and learn. And what I have learned over the years, I can share with people so they don't have the worry of, my God, I don't want to do this. Because if I'm vulnerable, if I admit I need help, if I talk about times I've been wrong, then I'm going to lose the respect of the people I'm leading. Well, no, that's not how it works, but they don't know that, because they don't have the ability to take those risks that I was able and willing to take.
I as you're saying that, I think it's super interesting, because I kind of had a similar thing where, and I think for me, I've always kind of been in tune, and I was always on the path. But, people ask like, oh, when was your awakening? I'm like, I don't know which one, like at which time. But I do remember, kind of these breaking points within the business and growing pains. I worked for a big company, and I started when it was a startup. And so I saw all of the most difficult moments like a company can ever face, to the biggest highs. And then right before I left, maybe not so high. And I did kind of like the same thing. I think it's really interesting. And that was really helpful. I saw that, certain things that we were doing weren't working. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to try this out with my top producers, like my top people in the team who are coachable. Because I always say, like, when people want me to teach them something, I'm like, okay, 2 things. I'm like, well, 3 things. Number 1, Are you coachable? Well, actually, no. Number one, do you have a good attitude? If you don't have a good attitude, I cannot help you. Like, why? Because attitude shows you that you're grateful of something, right? When you're grateful, you could never have a bad attitude. So, number one is, how's your attitude? Okay, cool. You're good. You're smiling. You're happy. Cool. At least try. Like, at least the minimum offering that you can do for the planet and for a mentor and for a teacher is to have a smile on your face. Number two, are you coachable? And now, because someone will always say, yeah, I'm coachable. And then you go and you teach them something and you tell them that they're not coachable because it's the crown, right? It's their lotus.
So the word I use for that is, are they curious?
Are they curious? Are you curious? That's a great way. Are you curious? Do you want to know? Are you committed to being curious? Okay, let's go. And number three, I would say be punctual, right? When a mentor, when a teacher, when a guide comes in, it's like, okay, you're going to be able to do that. So I also did a similar thing. I took those, like, let's say 5 people who were coachable, who had a great attitude, who were curious, right? Who were committed. And I started to, same thing. I started to kind of like teach them different ways. One of the first things that I worked on is an exercise that we're going to do in Bali. Randy's coming with us to Bali, and Randy's also coming with us on another retreat. He's going to be a speaker, but we're going to have to drop that in later on. But if you guys are actually interested in joining us, it's going to be in October. I haven't shared the details with you guys later, but once I do, I'm going to put it in the bio. So if you're seeing this around that time, Randy's going to be a speaker at this incredible retreat that we're having. But one of the first things that we're going to go over in Bali is something that I call the $2 million exercise. And this $2 million exercise, basically, it's the concept of, I'm going to give you $2 million, depending on the client, depending on who it is. I might give you 5, I might give you 10. And I ask you, what would you do with this money? And people are usually like, it's interesting to see the reactions that people have when you sound, no, seriously, I'm giving you this money right here. What are you going to do with it? Some people might tell you, I don't know, it's too much money. Some people will tell you, I know exactly what I'm going to do with this money. I'm going to buy this, and that. But the majority of people might maybe have 1 or 2 or 3, 4 things that they're like, well, sometimes the first thing that they tell you is, I'm going to pay off my debt. So that tells me that that person is always thinking about their debt. It's not letting them advance because, and there is great, such a thing as great debt.
We find the truth in the extremes. So when you give them this extreme amount of money, suddenly they're forced to look at a different part of themselves.
Exactly. And so it shows too that, like, even if you have the money, even if you have the resources, you still would not know what to do with it. And so I started to ask this question during my interviews, and I would interview people, like, we were interviewing like 10 people a day. And, once they made it to have like the final interview with me, I would come in and I would say, okay, I want you to conceptualize, like, really sit down with this, close your eyes, we're in a corporate setting, very not manifestation-ish at all, right? And so I'm just like, real quick, we're going to do something a little woo-woo. Okay, just a little quick. Close your eyes. Okay, I want for you to envision me literally giving you this money. What are you going to do with it? And the people, on their reactions, that was the people that I would know, this person's going to be great at sales. This person's going to be really hardworking, right? Because they have a commitment. They have something that's much bigger than them. They feel that responsibility, and they're not seeing it as a burden, because there's a big difference. They're seeing it as a responsibility. Man, I want to buy my mom this home because X, Y, and Z.
And now you can visualize that and put themselves there emotionally as well.
Exactly. So I think it's really interesting. For people, I mentor a lot of people, and one of the most interesting things is, especially when they're working and they're 9 to 5, and I call this like the growth phase, where they're in this level where they're like, okay, I finally remember my calling. I know what I was sent here to do, but I still work this 9 to 5 job. And the first thing that they want to do is like, I want to quit my job. And I'm like, no, hold up. This is why I love that you say this, because it's so true. Like, before you decide to go and leave your job, really take a moment to realize, like, why did God place me in this environment to begin with?
Most of my growth, personal growth, has come from my relationships at work.
Yeah.
And the challenges at work. and trying to understand how I could show up better for other people, how I could help other people show up better. And then looking at my irritations, all the things that irritate me or piss me off or just frustrated me, that's where all the growth was. That's where all the gifts were. It was in the irritations. And work is a great place for irritations, and work is a great place for our stuff to come up. And when we know that and we look at it like, okay, this is a gift. I'm not happy right now, but this is a gift. Then it changes the game. Now all of a sudden it really becomes a game, and it becomes a challenge to find what is there within me that I can look at and control. Because I can tell you from the first 30 years of my life, when I tried to control everything outside of myself, it certainly didn't work.
Yeah.
Because who have you ever found you could change? I never found anybody that could change.
No one. It's interesting because, I have a friend that, she has these challenges, and people are coming up to me. They're like, but why don't you help this person? Like, it's interesting. Her best friend, one of them is me, right? Who's in this space. The other one is a psychologist. And it's like, everyone's like, but why don't you guys help her? I'm like, the game of life.
And I talk
my
about
friend.
that in page 111 and 112 in my book. I talk about that because I try to help people, and I still help people or create the environment. But people can only be helped when they're ready to be helped.
Yes.
No matter how much we love them, no matter how much we care about them, no matter how perfect of an answer we have for them, they're only going to accept it when they're ready to accept it. So we can show them a good example.
Yes.
We can show them love. We can show them compassion, but we certainly can't get them to change until they're ready.
We see this also in like relationships. We do retreats and we do events and constellations and all this kind of cool stuff. And I will have, a client or a student tell me, yeah, I'm going to bring my husband, I'm going to bring my wife, and I'm going to buy their ticket. And I always tell them, if they happen to speak to me, I'm not going to let them just buy the ticket for them. I tell them, listen, have this person go out of their way, text me, and tell me that they're interested in going. They have to go out of their way to tell me, like, I am interested myself. Because if that it's the
I've
portal.
done that. My first wife, I brought her to a retreat that I knew was going to be really effective, and it was for me. And she just wasn't ready, and that's okay.
And I also, speaking of like relationships, I want to touch on, like you're saying, in the work environment. For me, I'm the same way. Like, I think that work ethic is something that I admire in someone. Like, it's one of the most important qualities that I can see in someone, because again, you see their worst side and you see their best side. And it's interesting because I met my partner at work, and everyone was like, oh my goodness, like, never date your coworker or anything like that. And I was like, no, I literally have seen the absolute best part in him, like his most talented side, right? Which is production. And like, you guys are watching this video, like, it's amazing. The quality is incredible, right? He's so hardworking. But also, there is a side of him at work that is probably not the best. And it's the only part that I see. Really, his darkest side is at work. And I'm the same way. You're going to get the darkest part of me at work too. My brightest and my darkest, right? Lilith exists within the business as well. All of us have this. But if you could see someone in that kind of environment, like, I've already seen the worst in you. So it's so interesting because we were like, I don't date your coworkers. I'm like, no, you can date your coworkers. Just be really sure. Like, do everything possible. Do everything possible not to date them. Because that's what we did. We were friends for 3 years. We did everything possible not to like each other, right? But I think what had us fall in love was actually our work ethic. So it's interesting. I think it's so cool. I mean, the work dynamic and how much our emotional evolution comes up at work. People think that they're like, oh my God, I'm in this trance, I'm in this loop, and I'm being sucked away from my biggest, highest calling. And I'm like, no, there was a reason.
That was my
you're
calling.
there.
So I had a near-death experience 7 years ago. I broke my neck.
At work?
No.
Okay.
Out riding dirt bike.
Oh yeah, because you're a dirt
actually a quad, because I love dirt bikes. But a friend had a fast quad, and I wanted to experience the power. I went too fast in an area I wasn't familiar with, went off a drop off and broke 2 vertebrae. And so during the near-death experience, I'm heading up and out, and it's intense. And I'm looking back at my life, and I said, well, I worked most of my life, but that's what I wanted to do, and I enjoyed it. So for me, it was my calling for the first half of my life. Hopefully I get another 60 years if I'm really lucky. And I did what I wanted to do, and I learned what I needed to learn. I had all those experiences for all the emotional release and the personal growth and all that. And I couldn't have had that if I would have had an easy job, if I would have had a situation without challenges. So those challenges helped me become who I am today. Now, today, my life's completely different, but I couldn't be on the path that I'm on now if I hadn't have gone through all those opportunities for learning, all those irritations, all the fear, all the challenges. And so I'm thankful for that. And work, as you said, it shows us our best and our worst. And it gives us so many opportunities to connect with so many different personalities that we wouldn't have if we just stayed home.
All the archetypes.
Every one of them.
Whoa, it's crazy. All the different archetypes that show up in a work environment. And as a leader, isn't it interesting how, like, when, if you think about maybe like your first jobs or even being in environments where you're co-collaborating with someone and you see all the different archetypes, it's interesting. You can only see it as a leader when you're from the top. But when you're in the matrix, you're like, oh my God, why is this woman like driving me crazy? She's such a nagger. She's this, she's that. But as a leader, you're like, no, that person has their place. Even like at workshops and retreats, it's interesting. Like, it's normal for the personalities to come out. You're spending 7 days
And
together.
all the right ones that irritate each other find each other.
The
So
triggers are key.
one thing I loved doing as a leader was mediation. So if two people didn't get along, I would talk to each one ahead of time, tell them the rules, and we sit them down together, and they would have to say, when this happens or when you do this, this is what I feel or this is what I experience, from first person only. No attack, just explaining themselves to each other. And it was amazing. Out of all the many mediations I've done, I had 2 that didn't work out great because somebody just wasn't willing to look at themselves. But all the rest of them, everybody bonded. And then afterwards, they liked each other, they respected each other because they realized they could express themselves and they were still going to get along. Because people are afraid to express themselves. They're afraid if they say, this is what I'm experiencing, they're going to be judged or it's going to be held against them. So it was really fun to be able to watch these people who didn't get along and didn't agree and really sometimes really hated each other to finally find some common ground and to find that we're all different, but we can all find ways to communicate and understand each other and have some compassion. And that was really a fun part as I advanced more and I became more clear and I was able to hold that space for other people, to be able to see people really find a deeper experience at work. And that's how we built great teams, is for people to learn how to disagree. And in the end, they got along.
Yes. The game of empathy. And I think it's funny because every single time I've ever been into one of those mediation moments, right, where you have these 2 individuals who are triggering each other so much and they end up being like the same person, the same exact person.
Because they reminded each other of what they didn't like in themselves. And once they got to own that, then it all changed. And there has to be a mediator who can hold the space.
Yeah.
And who can keep everything civil. But again, I took what I learned about myself and I applied it to the rest of the team in the way of helping them understand that we're all spiritual beings on a human path. We're all doing the best we can and we all want to succeed. But if the leader doesn't provide an environment where we feel safe, then we're not going to give our best. So I had to be vulnerable. I had to admit my mistakes. I had to connect with people from a different way of not being the authority, but being of service. So when I show up of service and I'm vulnerable, then people didn't look at me and say, oh, Randy's weak. They did the opposite. They said, this person must really be strong because they're showing up and they're sharing their weaknesses and they're sharing their vulnerability. They must really have it together. And it's true. We have to be pretty confident in who we are. And we have to understand, here's what's key. We have to understand our power as a leader isn't from us.
Yeah.
Power is the ability, in physics, power is the ability to accomplish work. Well, that's the people I work with. And so if I help them feel safe, if I help them understand I'm there to support them, then suddenly they're on my side. And when I listen to them, they're listening to me, And then we're all working together without having to be protected, without having to be guarded, without being worried about being judged. That's how we build great teams. That's how we build great companies. That's how we change industries. That's how we change the world, is by showing up in a way that we're there to support the people we lead. And when these people that we lead feel that, then it changes everything.
Yeah, it
That's the
does.
only way that I've been able to find the best, to bring the best out of it. It's the only way to bring the best out of everybody that I was leading.
We just added this book. I was like, wait, let's get the book over here. Yeah. But you mentioned, you talk a lot about vulnerability.
Yes.
And as a leader, how important this is. And I love that you mentioned how this is like a source energy, right? The vulnerability part.
I found early on that when I'm comfortable with a conversation or a subject that others might not be comfortable with, as long as I'm comfortable with it, then they become comfortable with it. And I had a challenge that both my brother and I faced as leaders. And when I had to discipline somebody, I felt shame, even though I did nothing wrong. Well, I was talking with my brother about that, and he says, yeah, you know where that comes from? That comes from our father, because when he had to discipline us, he felt shame. He didn't want to have to do that. Once I became comfortable with that and I worked through the emotions around my own shame, then if I had to talk to somebody about, hey, you need to improve here, you're late to work, or you can raise the game.
Yes.
And I was comfortable walking into those conversations, then the person I was talking to was comfortable. So I could deliver really difficult messages. And as long as I knew where I was and I did it from a place of caring and compassion, then it was well received. But if I was uncomfortable because I wasn't sure about how the message would be received, then that was mirrored back to me. So as leaders, if we can look at ourselves first and say, okay, I have to deliver this message. How do I feel about this? Not how are they going to feel? How do I feel? And then say, okay, I'm uncomfortable. I'm going to journal. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to do some breath work, some tapping. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to work out, and I'm going to work through this. I'm going to work through this emotion. Then when I show up to deliver the message and I'm clear and grounded, the conversation's really easy.
The thin line, which is like, how do you ensure that it's never to a point where you're just throwing up in that moment of emotion?
So we have to be true with ourselves and say, how do I really feel? So once I'm comfortable with the situation, and I talk about this in my book, The Third Element, I had a court case where I lost $450,000. I could have lied and won the case, but I didn't. So, and I can live with that. But a lot easier than the $50,000. Losing the $450. Let me back this up.
$450,000.
Okay, let me back this up. So I had a situation one day where I had lost a court case. I could have lied and I wouldn't have lost $450,000. But it was easier to live with myself telling the truth than losing $450,000 than telling a lie and having to live with that. So I'm emotional. I'm working through all this. And I will walk down into my shipping department in my warehouse. And I just saw how much they had improved over the last week or so on some areas where they had some challenges. And I was already raw. I was emotional, but I was really in a place of gratitude. So I'm talking to them and I'm crying. Tears are coming down while I'm talking to these people. And I was so comfortable with my emotions at the time that they were comfortable. They weren't uncomfortable because they didn't have anything to mirror back from me. And I love these people, and it was beautiful to see how much they improve. Well, if I was at all uncomfortable being that emotional, they would have been uncomfortable. So I've been in these situations. I've cried in front of my employees 2 or 3 times, where it's in front of small groups and larger groups of people, because I'm so emotional, usually from a place of gratitude. And when it's pure, and when I'm really feeling that gratitude, and I'm calm and centered in that, then they're comfortable with that. It doesn't bother them a bit. So if I am emotional from a place of discomfort and I'm spewing out my own healing in a place that I should have done on my own, then that can cause discomfort in the group. But if I'm coming from a place of pure connection, of pure gratitude, of pure thank you for being who you are, and this is so beautiful, and I want to share my feelings with you for all that you've done that I'm thankful for, then that's accepted really easily. So it always comes back to us. If I find clarity within myself, then there's no issue when I'm showing up and sharing my positive emotions with people.
How, seeing like men in the space and, business owners, being afraid of showing that vulnerability still. Like, even if they get the opportunity to learn all these different tactics and having the right leaders and the right people like teaching them like this concept, like when it comes to them finally like showcasing like, hey, I've gone through this journey, and now how am I going to go to my clients and my team and showcase this side of me that I've never shown before, because they're afraid of losing it all, like you were saying.
We have to practice with our partner. We practice with family members. We practice with people we can trust. And that starts out as a small circle. But as we become more comfortable with our own emotions and we go through more emotional healing, then it becomes easier. So I never use my emotions to make decisions. I never use emotions to manipulate, but I'm considerate of my emotions. I write them down. I work on them on my own time outside of work so I can come back to work more clear. I guide other people through writing them down and working through them in a time and space away from their position of leadership so they can come back more clear. But once we become more clear, it becomes easier to help others through that and to just tell people what we think and what we feel. Because again, when we're not harboring any worries, then the people around us don't worry. And that's always mirrored back to us. So I had to find the time and space to do that on my own. I've helped many men when I owned Randy's Worldwide. I've had over 20 men sit at my desk across from me when they come to me with some sort of a problem, and I hold that space. And pretty soon they're working through their emotions and they're crying, and I'm tearing up while I'm holding that space for them because it's very emotional. And then their problems are solved, not immediately, not directly always, but they're always headed in the right direction to find solutions. And some of them are still there and are great leaders because they've been able to find that place where they've released their own worries, their own pain, their own emotional wounds, and they show up more genuine. And even if they're not vulnerable, they can still show up more genuine and more authentic. And so that's kind of the stepping stone, the first steps into becoming vulnerable is being authentic and being genuine and realizing when they are. So it's about self-awareness. We have to, as leaders, be aware of, when am I protecting my ego? When am I protecting my inner child? When am I afraid of my own intuition and what the world's going to think of me? So as we learn to do that, and that's what I do when I'm coaching leaders, is help them become more self-aware of all these different components and aspects of themselves, then they can work through it at their own pace. And as they become more clear and become more comfortable, then the whole journey becomes easier. The first few steps are hard, but once they make the first few steps, it becomes a lot easier. And I've seen some leaders who've held on to their own ways and have held themselves back. And I've seen some leaders who have embraced their own internal pain and healing, and they've become amazing leaders.
And I see, I think right now we're seeing the acceptance of men being able to showcase this side. And it's interesting because I come from a world where it's mostly male dominated, right? There was a large period of time where I was the only woman, the only Latina, and the only person that didn't pertain to a certain political party. And so that was like my life for many, many, many years. And it was interesting because for a long time, I was always as a leader, I found myself being a person that was okay with being vulnerable. But because of the environment, I was like, no, now I have to hold back. And so I see a lot of young women who are in these, big spaces, whether it's sales or marketing or working for a Fortune 500 companies. And they are like, no, I cannot showcase this side of me, my femininity. They're very much learning how to be completely tapped into their masculine. And something that I've noticed is like, okay, where does this stem from? Is that because women were controlled for such a long time, right? If we look, our mothers, our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, at all times, the human being has been surviving, trying to figure things out. Women have been trying to really provide in a way that from a more nurtured level, right? Like, how do I make sure that my community and my home and and everything around me is in a taken care of
so
place?
That's the answer. But before they can get to that space, they have to heal the hurt, wounded girl inside of them, the inner child who's still trying to get some man's approval.
Yes.
Their father, their grandfather, their brother, whoever it was. They were taught, because men wanted to hold them down when they were growing up, that they needed to be tough and masculine in order to succeed. But that's not true. It's just like us as men.
Yeah.
When we're going through junior high and high school, if we show any vulnerability, any caring or compassion or intuition, then we're attacked verbally and a lot of times physically because all the testosterone and all these young men trying to find their place in the world. And if they can knock somebody down, they're a notch higher.
Yes.
So we learn when we're growing up that we need to be masculine to survive. But as leaders, that's not what brings us success. Myself, still a very masculine man, intelligent masculine man at the age of 64, the only way I am successful and effective as a leader is to embrace my feminine traits. And so when I work with women who are leaders and wanting to be more effective as leaders, we go into healing the inner child. Now, I think people say, inner child, what the heck are you talking about? So me as a man, I love to ride my dirt bike. That's my inner child.
Yeah.
My creativity and my problem solving, that's the inner child. We don't need to kill that. We don't want to let them run the whole show. We still need the adult, our ego and the intelligent side of ourselves, but we partner. Our ego partners with our inner child for creativity and joy and love and connection with others, and we connect with and partner with our higher self through our intuition. So it's a balance. And the women I work with, when they find that healing of, okay, I know who I am, I approve of myself, and I don't need to prove myself to the men or women around me, and I don't have to show up flexing my masculine, now they can connect with the people they work with through caring, through compassion, through vulnerability. But as long as they need that approval and they show up with a part of them scared, the world around them reacts and they're not as effective as they can be. So the masculine is the planning, is the discipline, is following schedules and being organized. Yeah, all those masculine traits are
Sounds
necessary.
like almost every woman right now.
And they all know that. They already have that. They don't need to build that up. They just say, okay, they already have that. And so in the coaching,
but it's because they've had to. They've had
well,
to.
they had to
develop
as they
that.
were growing up. But now that they're a grown up, and now when they find that healing within themselves, they don't have to guard that inner child through being tough. They don't have to prove themselves because they've already accepted themselves. When we accept ourselves, men and women included, when we accept ourselves, now we don't have to prove anything. Now we can just show up and hold that space for others to be safe, for others to find connection, for others to be vulnerable and find their own healing. And now we don't have to do the kumbaya retreats at work. We don't have to do that.
Yeah.
We show up still intelligent and organized, but from a place of love and a place of caring. And then we find the balance between the masculine organization and pushing where we need to push and accepting where we need to accept and connecting where we need to connect. And we have that balance of masculine and feminine for men or women. We both have to find the balance. And when women can take on the masculine traits when they need to, it doesn't take away from their feminine.
Yes.
And again, leaders are most effective, men or women, where they're in touch with the feminine traits of connection.
Were you always super connected? Like, what sign are you?
I'm a Virgo. I was never connected.
You're a Virgo?
No,
I'm a Virgo.
The reason I can, that's perfect. This is the reason that you and I can deliver the message we do, because I came from a world of all action, all mental, no emotional, no consideration, no compassion. And then I learned all these traits and I had to learn how to integrate these. I had to learn how to show up differently. So when I show up and I'm teaching a man or a woman how to go from all left brain to balanced with right brain and connecting, I had to learn that so it's easy to teach. I had to quantify that. I had to incorporate that into who I am. Now, still today, I'm still going to take action first and think second. Now, my normal day is thinking, but if you put a person in an emergency situation, that's who they are first. Do I become emotional and freeze up? Do I think and I freeze up? Do I take action? Do I think first and take the right action? So I still take action, I think, and then I feel. So emotions are not first for me. I don't share what I'm sharing because I'm wired this way. I'm sharing because the universe is wired this way. And what the universe and the people around us respond to is where we're at emotionally. That's first for trust. That's first for, am I going to follow this person? That's first for, am I safe to be myself?
What was little Randy like? Was he
very sensitive? But
very
then
sensitive?
Again, in junior high and high school, I was physically beat up. I was physically abused. And I had to go through all that, and I had to toughen up. Now, I thank my mother for helping me come from a place of being weaker instead of being strong right away. And I've had this conversation with my mom. She didn't want me to be strong, so I was weaker. And then it forced me into places where I had to find my strength.
But you have another brother?
I have a younger
One?
brother. One younger brother. Yes.
It's just two of you.
Just the two of us. But
Interesting.
But again, I was at a place where I was weak when I was in junior high and high school, and through what I experienced, I found my strength. Now I overcorrected and I came off way too serious, and people they still take me too serious. They don't realize I like to have fun.
Yeah.
And I like to joke, and I like to do those things.
I think I want to touch on that because you face something that I think I faced as well, which was the fitting in. I couldn't fit in the spiritual community, and then I couldn't fit into the business world. And my business friends, I was too woo-woo, and I was too spiritual. I was too much of a hippie. And then even till today, right, I'm in my spiritual circle and I'm too businessy. I'm too much about money. I'm too much about like, let's plan, let's create, you know? And I cannot imagine that you don't face the same thing, especially considering the cowboy hat. Like, I'm sure you go into a circle, right? And you're there like, who's this man? Which is something that I tell my clients, especially my women clients all the time. They're like, I'm looking for a man who's on the frequency, who gets the vibe. And I'm like, let me tell you something. And I literally always say, they might be wearing a cowboy hat and you won't even know it. They don't look like the person. I don't know what you think that each spiritual man is going to have a man bun or a beard and their mala beads. No, do you look like that? Because not every, and I think it's because a lot of women, we naturally, when we're on this path, we connect to like the feminine, are very much to our creation and kind of like our Venus and all this stuff. So it's very natural for us to kind of fall in love with fabrics and beads and all that stuff. So I get why women naturally start to dress a certain way, but I remind them all the time, I'm like, listen, your man is probably not going to be in the mala beads as well. So talk to me about how people see you when you're entering these spaces, especially when, you know, you're in this environment before, you're in the automotive space, you're talking about parts or service advisors and all this stuff. And then you're here and you're like, no, I'm actually this human being that is living this experience, but I want to, you know, talk to you about something that actually even matters more. And so talk to me about that.
So I used to be 36 years ago, completely judgmental of everything and everybody and myself. And I thought that was going to help me succeed. So as I work through my own judgments of myself, then I had less judgment of the people around me. And I'm at a place where I know the judgment doesn't do any good at all. Now I'm discerning, and I'll set my boundaries.
Discerning,
but I'll be discerning without emotion. Anytime I have an emotional reaction to anything and I'm irritated, I know 100% that has to do with an opportunity for growth. Typically feeling old pain and releasing it. So once I got to a place of no judgment, then people are comfortable around me. They sense that. We sense each other.
Yes.
We walk into a room.
Yeah.
Even if I walk into a board meeting and I think, oh, I'm here with the board. Now I'm going to be tough. No, if I have any worry and I'm trying to push that down, I'm trying to act tough, people feel that. So I have to get to a place of being clear within myself, understanding my own wounds, healing those. And even if I haven't healed them, at least being aware of them so they don't have to come up. Law of attraction will remind us of any healing opportunity we have. But once I write it down, I don't have to be reminded because I'm going to go back. I actually made the commitment to go back and face that. And so when it comes to holding the space for somebody so they can release, I have to be willing to look at myself. I have to be willing to feel my own pain. And I have to be in a place where there's no judgment. And when there's no judgment, the people sense that and they relax into that. And I ask them a few questions and they realize, okay, they don't even realize it.
Yeah.
A part of them subconsciously realizes I'm here to help them because all I want is for them to feel better. All I want is for them to let go of their pain. All I want is for them to connect with that hurt inner child who's ready to be recognized, who's ready to be heard, who's ready to be hugged and held and acknowledged. And when I see that in them, then they can see that within themselves. And it just flows.
And you're like, let me just address the elephant in the room. Yes, I have a cowboy hat on. Like, you're like, yes, I may not look like the person that you think is gonna be held, but guess what? You're being held. I think that's what that does. Oh, he's like, I'm gonna take off my,
Right.
because I feel like by you being able to be vulnerable in that way,
Yes.
it shows people that, man, there is a brother just like Randy at the supermarket. There is another brother just like Randy down the street, and I'm in a safe environment. So like like we were talking at the beginning, the new earth means that there's people who look different in different ways. They don't look all the same. The new earth is calling out for the construction worker, is calling out for the teacher, is calling out for, the average Joe to step up from a heart-centered place. But the key here, the third element, right, is working from that heart-centered place.
We have to. Until we're clear enough within ourselves to be able to show up with an open heart, people will not show up as genuine. They will not show up as authentic. When they feel we are guarding ourselves, then they automatically guard themselves. That's human nature. So we as leaders have to be bold enough, have to be brave enough to dig into our own shit and cry the tears and do the work and admit where we have an opportunity to improve. A lot of it's mindset, but the really powerful healing is, what old wound do I have that I haven't felt completely? So our emotional wounds, emotions are bigger than time and space. Our emotional wounds are like gasoline. You can store it in a metal can and you can pour it out 20 years later, pour out a little bit and burn it off. It's gone. Pour it all out and burn it off. It's going to be a big fire, but it's going to be gone. Now, the universe and the law of attraction, like attracts like, only brings us what we're ready to experience. So when I started my healing journey, like, oh, this is going to be awful because I got all this old emotion coming up and it's going to be too much. Well, it never is, because the universe loves us and says, I'm only going to give you the experience you're ready for. I'm only going to ask you to heal whatever you're capable of healing right now. So when we learn this, and I explain all this in the book, when we learn this and we can then embrace our old emotional pain and work through it at whatever pace we're comfortable with, then it's easy to show up differently. It's easy to show up genuine. It's easy to show up authentic. And when we do that, then the people around us become more authentic, more genuine, and they don't have to have emotional release in front of us. They just need to know that they can be themselves because we're not guarded. So the work always comes back to us. We can never ask anybody else to go down that path. They have to be ready. So when we look at ourselves and say, I'm the problem and I'm the solution, then we admit we're the problem, and then we can become the solution.
Yes.
And that's not easy. It wasn't easy for me to do that. But as I did that gradually, and I hit a tipping point, I talk about that in the book too. We hit a tipping point of saying, oh, this is going to hurt, but I know I'm going to feel better afterwards. That's the tipping point. Because when we release the old pain, whatever space within us was holding that old pain, when the pain is gone, love replaces that pain. And the love expands within us. And I could feel, and I still can feel, when I have a big release, I feel just a warm sensation of comfort.
Yes.
And things feel better.
Yes.
And then we get addicted to that feeling of feeling better. Now it's like, bring on the pain and I'm going to get through this.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a wonderful place to be, because I can guarantee it always puts us in a place where our life improves. Our health improves. Our thoughts are more effective. Our actions are more effective. Our business interactions are more effective, and our profits go up, and our business expands. And this isn't just about kumbaya and we're going to feel better. This is about real success. This is about tangible growth in our businesses, in our investments, in our life.
On fire, Andy.
It's real.
So deep.
I came from a pretty simple background. I was fortunate. I'm a pretty smart guy, and I had a good work ethic. I learned the work ethic from my father. I was just gifted, but I was held back by my own emotions. And when I worked through those, then all the success poured through that was so much bigger than I could have created with my mind and my actions.
Wow. Randy, I've had so much fun talking to you. I think that clearly, like, I always have this podcast and I'm like, man, can we just like stay for hours? No, but with you, I think one of the biggest things is like, how can we constantly remember that God is welcoming us into these rooms? God sent you into these rooms. You are made for these rooms. And your pain is the superpower, right? That's the thing that,
Yes.
and I love that you say the thing about the cycle, right? Like, don't fall also into the cycle where it's like, I'm addicted to healing. No, I'm addicted to evolving. This is evolution. You're better and better and better every single time. You're not at the same place as before. A lot of people can't tell the difference, you know?
The love is waiting to come through when we get out of
Yes.
our own way and when we're willing to dive into that pain completely,
Yes.
embrace it and release it.
It's expanding. It's expanding. And so, anyways, I have had so much fun talking to you. We've had such incredible conversations outside of here, and I'm so excited to continue to work with you and collaborate. I know that your mission is so, so, so pure and beautiful. If you guys are watching, if this is your first time watching Randy, make sure, where can people find you?
They can find me on my website, randylyman.com. They can find the book, links to the book through there, and some wonderful workbooks that I've created, and a lot of free things that I offer on the website. So find me there.
Nice. Yay. And you guys will see him hopefully at some more events, because I know that we're going to collaborate, and you guys must check out this incredible book. I am excited to jump in there too. This man is doing God's work truly. And before we end the podcast, I'd like to ask you, what do you consider that makes your soul rich? What makes you rich inside?
The pain that I've gone through that I appreciate so much now. It's helped me understand that everybody goes through pain. It helps me understand that everybody has challenges. It helps me understand that everybody has the potential to get closer to their God self and have more beauty and love in their life. No matter how hard it is for them to see themselves in a better position, they can always find a solution. Just take the small wins and appreciate every challenge in your life. And we don't here's the important part. We don't have to do it perfectly.
Mm. You say something wins, the wins are important. Sometimes we don't pause enough to enjoy those wins too. So thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys liked it, be sure to subscribe, comment what was your favorite little gem. Be sure to connect with Randy, and hopefully we'll get to chat with you guys very soon.